Hello and welcome back to Shak's Talks. I'm Shakti, and today I'm doing a recap episode of Season 2, the Psychic Season. So on this channel, I'm studying anomalous phenomena of all kinds, UFO, UAP history, the telepathy and remote viewing side of the phenomena, and we're going to be moving into contact and abduction. Throughout Season 2, I've been studying various functions of consciousness, including the out-of-body experience, NDEs, meditation, the use of sound in meditation and in the out-of-body practice. I've been researching the remote viewing history and the big names who have contributed to remote viewing programs in the US. And today, instead of giving you a recap the way I did for Season 1, where we just went through and looked at each episode, kind of did a high-level summary of what went on in each episode, today I'm going to do the kind of end of semester review version of that. So I've put together about 15 pages of bullet points here. And I'm going to be talking about this huge pile of books that I have in front of me that I'm going to show you and giving you biographical information of all of these people. Now, if you're new to this channel, I just want to make the note that this channel is intended to be kind of an onboarding into the anomalous studies world. And so it's designed in a way to move you through the really well-known history of UFOs around the world. And then we go into this topic of consciousness studies and remote viewing and how that all relates to the field of anomalous studies that also looks at UAP. And then we're going to move into contact and abduction or experiencers, because you can't just jump to that part without having the other stuff already kind of in your mind. It's too hard to grasp. So this whole channel is designed to help you to at least start to understand that these things are not that strange. They're more normal than they are paranormal. They're more common than you think. They're more real than the US Cover-Up and Disinformation Act has led you to believe. And all of that is pretty obvious to everyone who's in it. So if you're already in it, check out the recap episodes if you're new to this channel, because that's where you'll get kind of like a nice overview of what I've done here. And if you have friends who you want to talk about this stuff with, send them to my channel, tell them to subscribe, and send them to the very beginning, because once they go through Season 1 and 2, then you'll be able to talk to them and have really interesting conversations. So that's what this is all about. Thank you so much for being here, and let's get into it. So we're going to start with Bob Monroe, or Robert Monroe, and the summaries that you're going to hear in terms of bios today, some come from Wikipedia, some come directly from the books that I have here, others come from the websites. All of those links are below. As always, there's a description box with links and websites, and today I'll just hold up and show you all the different books that I read for Season 2. Well, some of the books, most of the books that I read. So Robert Monroe was born in 1915 and passed away in 1995. He was a radio broadcasting executive, grew up in Kentucky and Ohio. His early fascination was with flying and music. Me too. I mean, flying for sure. I was obsessed with flying as a kid. Anyway, he had 3 marriages, 1 biological daughter, and other children that were his wife's children. And during World War II, he was classified unfit for service. I can't remember what the health condition was, but he ended up working for a manufacturing company that designed a flight simulator prototype. He produced a weekly radio show for the National Aeronautic Association that was intended to get the youth interested in aviation. In 1953, Monroe formed RAM Enterprises, a corporation that produced network radio programs. In 1956, the firm created a research and development division to study the effects of various sound patterns on human consciousness, including the sleep state. Monroe was especially attracted to the concept of sleep learning. While experimenting with sleep learning in 1958, Monroe experienced an unusual phenomena which he described as sensations of paralysis and vibration, accompanied by a bright light that appeared to be shining on him from a shallow angle. Monroe went on to say that this occurred another 9 times over the next 6 weeks, culminating in his first out-of-body experience, or OBE. He recorded his account in his 1971 book, Journeys Out of the Body, and went on to become a prominent researcher in the field of human consciousness. Monroe later authored 2 more books on his experiments with OBE, Far Journeys, 1985, and Ultimate Journey, 1994. So these are the books. This is book 1. I've listened to all these on Audible, and I'm rereading this one right now. This is book 2, Far Journeys. Book 3, The Ultimate Journey. Love the cover art on these. And I often like to listen to audiobooks and read the physical book because it kind of seeps into my brain in different ways, and I like to do both because I require repetition for learning. So that's my method. So in 1962, Ram Enterprises moved to Virginia, and a few years later changed the corporate name to Monroe Industries. Okay, so this is the place where the Hemi-Sync technology was born. In 1975, Monroe registered the first of several patents. Hemi-Sync is short for hemispheric synchronization, also known as brainwave synchronization. And to just summarize this all up really quickly here, it's basically the binaural beat technology. Many different people have different versions of this. Hemi-Sync was his version. Tom Campbell, one of his students, who we'll talk about later, came up with his own binaural beats. So there's lots available to you on the internet and for purchase, through various sites. But this sound technology plays different tones in each ear to create a synchronized, 2 synchronized hemispheres, creating what do they call it? Let's see. A frequency following response designed to evoke certain effects. So this is used for relaxation, sleep induction, learning, and memory aids, helping those with physical and mental difficulties and reaching altered states of consciousness through the use of sound. And you're going to hear this repeated throughout today as we go over all these people, but nobody that I'm talking about in season 2 of Shock's Talks is using drugs to induce altered states or go out of body. And that's not to say that those experiences aren't valid, but I'm focusing on the non-drug induced research, and that's just what I think is important right now. So anyway, that's what I'm focusing on, and that's what you're going to hear all about from all these different people, including the ancient yogis. And that's not to say that there was never a yogi that used plant medicine, because they absolutely did. But this lineage and these current teachers that we're focusing on today are all saying, you don't need any of that stuff, and also it's not helpful. And that's what a lot of the remote viewers say. That's what a lot of the people that study anomalous phenomena say. And I personally have had a very diverse background, including drug use. Yes, it's true. And I find that those experiences are valuable and were important for my development and my own soul's journey. But at this point in my life, I'm really, really kind of obsessed with studying these things and practicing these techniques with a sober mind. And you'll learn more about why if you read any of these books. So this is just an interesting note about dealing with pain. There were studies done using Hemi-Sync so it was a replicated double-blind randomized trial on anesthetized patients have found Hemi-Sync effective as a partial replacement for fentanyl during surgery. And fentanyl is a synthetic opioid, also a very dangerous one that is showing up a lot in street drugs and killing people these days. So not a great thing, but is used in surgery. And apparently some of these techniques can help with pain mitigation without drugs, which is very interesting. So if you're someone that experiences insomnia, chronic pain, or you have other sort of issues that you want to deal with, meditation is always available to you as a tool that you can try for yourself. And I'm using this app right now called Expand Beyond Meditation. It comes from the Monroe Institute, and it has a lot of their guided meditations, and I actually really like them. But you can also just go directly to their website, which I linked below. Without buying the app, you can just buy different downloads if you want to try out like some of their Hemi-Sync technology or their specific meditations. And some of those are designed for dealing with pain. Okay, so we're talking about Virginia, Monroe Institute's in Virginia. I've never been there in my life, but I did grow up in Virginia for part of my childhood, and I was kind of back and forth between California and Virginia at different points throughout my life. But we're going to talk a little bit more about Virginia and some other things that were going on there as we go through these bios today. So, side note on Hemi-Sync, when I was a kid, I had a relative who would visit, and he was super into the Hemi-Sync technology and used to like put the headphones on me and test it out on me as a kid. Now, I will say I always had a very weird relationship with this particular relative and was not super into his whole vibe, let's just say. And I was not into the Hemi-Sync at that time, and I was kind of like annoyed that he was making me try these things out. I thought the music sounded cheesy. It was weird, and I just didn't understand what was going on. I almost felt like he was waiting to see if something magical would happen, and I don't like performing under pressure. And this is something that happened to me as a kid when another person in the community caught wind of the fact that I saw angels or fairies or orbs, because when I was little, I did see little things around and I didn't know what they were, and I had my different ideas about it as a kid. And anyway, she wanted me to come to her property and look for angels, and when I went and didn't see any, I think she was a little disappointed, but I wasn't gonna lie. It just didn't happen when I was there. I didn't see anything, so it just reminded me of that, the feeling of getting those headphones on and being like, leave me alone, basically. But now I have tried Hemi-Sync as an adult, and I do find it interesting, and I prefer Tom Campbell's binaural beats for pure binaural beat meditation, but I do really enjoy the Monroe Institute meditations using music and sound that I got through the app, the Expand app. So I'm messing around with that stuff a little bit right now. So we're gonna dig into my background, and I'm gonna give you some biographical information about some yoga teachers that I've talked about throughout the season, because we're moving through different periods in time and we're looking at all of the common threads here. So the Bob Monroe studies were going on. I mean, Tom Campbell was studying with him in the 70s. Bob Monroe was getting into that stuff even before that. These yoga teachers, the one that started the ashram that I grew up on, came to the United States in the 60s. So let's talk about that a little bit, because there's a lot going on at this period in time. There's also all the psychic spies were happening in the 70s. So we're just kind of looking at this whole tangled web, and I'm pulling out these threads for us, okay? So back to sound and meditation, a topic of season 2. So I grew up on this yoga ashram, like I've said before, which is why my name is Shakti. It was my birth name given to me by my parents, but they were into this Swami before they moved to the yoga ashram. So this is Sri Swami Satchidananda. This is one of the great yoga masters to bring the classical yoga tradition to the West in the 60s. He taught postures and meditation and introduced students to a vegetarian diet and a more compassionate lifestyle. During this period of cultural awakening, iconic pop artist Peter Max and a small circle of his artist friends invited Swamiji to extend an intended 2-day visit to New York City. They wanted him to stay longer so they could learn from him the secret of finding physical health, mental peace, and spiritual enlightenment. And a little side note here, I had an art class with Peter Max once when I was a kid. He came to our school, and so I got to meet him in person. That was pretty cool. He did, you can look up his artwork. It's iconic. You'll recognize it. And there were all these different celebrities that were into different yogas at this time in reality, different celebrities following different teachers. I remember a time when Jeff Goldblum and Laura Dern came to the ashram, and I thought that was really cool. Even though I was just a kid, for some reason I was like, Jeff Goldblum is cool. So there were different people in and out. This ashram, it was very small, very mild for the most part, nothing super controversial, although later on, I'll tell you a little bit about what happened after the Swami's death in 2002. But basically, this guru in 1969 opened the Woodstock Festival. So that's why some people like to think of him as the Woodstock guru, because it's an easy thing to remember. And his teachings of integral yoga are basically these interfaith ideals of truth is one, paths are many. So the whole ashram was designed to create a really, inclusive community that welcomed and encouraged the participation of all kinds of people from all kinds of different religious and cultural backgrounds under one temple, under, an altar to each major world religion and all other known faiths. There was a monastery with monks. There was a school for the kids, a dining hall, and some dormitories where different programs for teacher training would happen over the years. So it's this ashram did not have a ton of money, although different people would come throughout the years to make donations or help improve the roads or help build the temple or whatever. So there's, my experience was like this Swami, this guru was kind of like a grandfatherly figure in the community. When I was a kid, he was very, very old with white hair and a white beard. He looked like an old wizard. And I always felt very positive energy from him. His teachings were very solid in my mind. And so for me, it was, being there was good. That wasn't the case for everyone. Everyone had different experiences. And as with every guru and every ashram or any community or commune, there's going to be some drama. There's going to be some controversy over the years. And what happened here was basically, he was a celibate monk in everyone's eyes, but later on, after his death, we found out that first he had a consensual relationship with a woman who was his secretary for a number of years. She talked about it. She said, we chose to do this. It wasn't anything bad going on, but people should know because, it was a secret, and that's weird. And it is weird. Like, why? Yeah, there's something not right there. And then, of course, after that happened, all these other women kind of came out of the woodworks. And these are women who are in a generation that's like older than my mom, a little bit older than my mom. So this all happened before our time with this ashram and with this guru in our lives. But that's some of the background. And, every time there's a guru or a personality who lots of people are following, you're going to find out, oh, they're just a human and human things are going on here. And they're not like perfect in every way. But what I will say is that gurus in this tradition are coming from a lineage. So it's like this string of pearls. It's like every pearl is a human vessel for these teachings. And, I think that the teachings are what matter, and the teachings aren't perfect, but there are really valuable things in them, and they're very sacred and they're very ancient. And so I'm super grateful that I was exposed to the teachings and that I had a positive experience living on a yoga ashram, because that really set me up for my life in a way that I value. So some of the milestones of this teacher: he created one of the first yoga teacher training and certificate programs. He initiated one of the first yoga programs in prisons and drug rehab centers. He founded the first yoga magazine in America and established one of the first residential yoga ashrams, which is where I lived. and created translation and commentary on the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which became the top-selling edition of this yoga classic, and that's what we're talking about here, the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. So this is that book. This is Swami Satchidananda here. He's much younger in this picture than he even was when I moved to the yoga community at the age of 5. And I'm going to read you something from this book here. Okay, because this is what relates to the anomalous phenomena, consciousness studies, telepathy, and remote viewing side of things. This is from the introduction. When the word yoga is mentioned, most people immediately think of some physical practices for stretching and stress reduction. This is one aspect of the yogic science, but actually only a very small part and relatively recent in development. The physical yoga, or hatha yoga, was primarily designed to facilitate the real practice of yoga, namely the understanding and complete mastery over the mind. So the actual meaning of yoga is the science of the mind. We all want to know more about our minds, how they work, and how we can work with them. This field is closer to us than anything else in life. It may be interesting and useful to know how to fix a car or cook a meal or how atoms split, but something that holds a more immediate and vital interest for thoughtful people is their own mind. What is the mind? Does it determine our behavior and experience, or do we create and sustain its activity? What is consciousness? Can we turn within ourselves to study and understand, perhaps even control the mind? This is the subject matter of the ancient science of Raja Yoga. So Raja Yoga is the mental science. It's the branch of yoga that deals with the mind. And I just flipped open to a page. Let me read you this one sutra that I just randomly opened to. Those who merely leave their physical bodies and attain the state of celestial deities, or those who get merged in nature, have rebirth. So as you can tell, this relates directly to out-of-body experiences, functions of consciousness, and also thought power, which is what we'll talk about next. So this is a very powerful book. Lots of very good information in here. No guru is perfect, but it doesn't mean they don't have some good teachings to share. This is the teacher that came before Satchidananda. This is Swami Sivananda. This is who is above him in the lineage. And Sivananda is located in India. Like he's not around anymore, obviously, but he never came to the US. So not as many people here might know about him. But let me read a little bit here. And by the way, I grew up, with every building had these pictures of these people and other saints and sages and other teachers, including Martin Luther King and all kinds of different people who the community felt were symbols of peace and intelligence. And so they were practically like these ancestors to me. Like I saw their faces everywhere. And I thought about them all the time, and I learned their teachings every weekend because, some people were going to church on Sunday, we were going to satsang on Saturday. So in a satsang, the whole community comes together, everybody chants. Sometimes there's different ceremonial practices and pujas and worship ceremonies. Sometimes it's like a religious holiday. And because it was an ecumenical interfaith community, we would have people from different cultures, from different countries that would come through and share songs or dances or lectures or readings from their culture, from their perspective. So it was pretty interesting. And when this guru was around and alive, he would also give a talk at that satsang. So he would take a teaching and he would speak on that for 10 to 20 minutes at the end of the night every Saturday. So that was something that really seeped into my young mind, and I think it did create a really good sort of foundation for the studies that I'm doing now, because it was normal to me to be thinking about consciousness from a very young age, and to also be practicing the techniques that help you to have your own experiences in consciousness. And one other personal thing that I'll share, and I usually don't love to talk too much about all of this because I just don't want to get us lost in the weeds, but it is important today to talk about. But my first experience with, well, my very first experiences with telepathy were all with my mom, to be honest. My mom has always been extremely psychic, and she knew things about me that I didn't always want her to know, and I knew things about her that she probably didn't want me to know too. So that's the very, very first person that I had like telepathic understanding with, which I think is pretty common. People and their moms and dads maybe, or parents of any gender. But this was how it was for me. It was with my mom. And Swami Satchidananda, or Gurudev as we called him, Gurudev, he proved telepathy to me at a very young age, and maybe I'll tell that story sometime. But it just so happened that I was reaching out to him with my mind during a time in my life when I was in distress, and I was kind of praying and reaching out to someone who I saw as a positive figure. And the next time I saw him in person, he acknowledged that. So I was like, wow, you are telepathic. Like, something is going on here. I'm not crazy. Like, I'm not alone in this world. People can feel thoughts, and some people can respond to that. So that was an important experience for me. That probably set me on this path of wanting to know more about what our minds can do. So, in terms of what our minds can do, this is thought power. And let me tell you a little bit about Sivananda. So, this book, Thought Power, was first published in 1962. So again, stuff going on in the 60s, 70s. This Swami passed away in 1963. He was born in 1887, okay? So he's the founder of the Divine Life Society, DLS, and Yoga Vedanta Forest Academy, author of over 200 books on yoga, Vedanta, and a variety of subjects. And spent most of his life not too far from Rishikesh. And so for me, Thought Power is basically like a manual for telepathy and a spiritual perspective on our non-physical aspects and powers. Let me read you a little tiny section of Thought Power. Thought excels light in speed. Thought excels light in speed. This is from chapter 1, Thought Power, its physics and its philosophy. While light travels at the rate of 186,000 miles per second, thoughts virtually travel in no time. Thought is finer than ether, the medium of electricity. In broadcasting, a singer sings a beautiful song at Calcutta. You can hear them nicely through the radio set in your own house at Delhi. All messages are received through the wireless. Even so, your mind is like a wireless machine. And this is written long before wireless technology, mind you. A saint with peace, poise, harmony, and spiritual waves sends out into the world thoughts of harmony and peace. They travel with lightning speed in all directions and enter the minds of persons and produce in them also similar thoughts of harmony and peace. Whereas a worldly man whose mind is full of jealousy, revenge, and hatred sends out discordant thoughts which enter the minds of thousands and stir in them similar thoughts of hatred and discord. So this book is very concise, and I'm just going to read you some of like the headings of the different sections here so that you can get a little taste of what's inside. We've got the physics and philosophy, laws and dynamics, values and uses of thought power, the functions of thought power, the development of thought power, there's like multiple categories under each of these headings also, and thoughts and their various thoughts, their varieties and their conquest, positive methods for thought control, from thoughts to thought transcendence, and it goes on and on. So I think this is a really cool book. And this talk of how our thoughts create reality, you hear this a lot in the New Age world. Thoughts create things, thoughts create your reality, you know, but books like this really help you to look at that and really break it down and consider, what does that really mean when people say that? When this Swami talked about, you know, a saint putting positive thoughts out into the world and how that actually affects people, I think we're going to understand more and more about this as time goes on. And there have already been these great studies. I mean, everyone is pretty familiar with the labeling of the water molecules and how they change shape. I mean, we're all starting to understand that thought and intention is a force in this reality, and the substance of reality might be consciousness. And so therefore consciousness, it's on an equal level with that power. The consciousness that's within us is actually able to make changes in reality. So these are ancient studies that help us to understand these very soundbite-like concepts that are floating around now. And actually, that's a good point. I should just say, while I'm on that topic, you know, I'm giving you all this like high-level overview of the things I'm learning, but I do hope you'll read some of these books, because there's just nothing like getting it for yourself firsthand. You know, there's so much nuance in these pages, in these words, in the stories of the people who wrote these books. You get to learn about their background, their perspective, the way they speak, how they organize their thoughts and information. All of that stuff is like this deeper layer of data collection, I suppose, and sorting that goes on in the background of my mind that helps me to compare things to each other as time goes on. It helps me to identify which people feel like they deserve my attention, which people right off the bat feel like they're not rigorous in their study and they're not eloquent in their communication, or maybe they are a little bit funky in the way they go about things, but they have something special to say. There's just so many layers of information. So I'm doing my best to convey to you what I'm getting from all of this, but there's more for you to get if you decide to read these books for yourself. So always promoting reading because it's awesome. And now, speaking of the non-physical and the thought world, let's jump back over to where we started with Bob Monroe, or Robert Monroe, and we're going to talk a little bit about Tom Campbell. I've talked about him a ton on this channel, so I'm not going to do a whole lot in this episode, but basically Tom Campbell is the scientist who studied under Bob Monroe. So again, a kind of a lineage of people, which we're going to see all throughout this, looking at like the remote viewers even. And this is not like a spiritual lineage, but just a lineage of knowledge and teaching. So Tom Campbell and Dennis Menerick went to the Monroe Institute in the 70s. And Tom studied this stuff for more than 50 years. So let me give you a little bit about his background. He worked as a physicist in technology development and complex system risk analysis for both government and industry. In addition, he championed for more than 50 years the scientific drug-free research into altered states of consciousness. This unique combination enabled him to develop My Big Toe, a scientific model of reality based on the insight that consciousness, not matter, consciousness, not matter, is fundamental to all existence. So this is a trilogy of his 3 books on consciousness: Awakening, Discovery, and Inner Workings. I love this book. It's not for everyone. I really enjoyed it. I think you can get this same information in a lot of different ways, but Tom does something special here because he takes these big esoteric concepts and these physics concepts and this like big picture understanding of anomalous and psi phenomena and the supernatural and the paranormal. And he brings it all down into like a really accessible language. He creates new kind of neutral terminology for things that carry a lot of connotations from other past attempts at explaining the nature of reality. So it's just, it's another fresh perspective on consciousness and the way things work. And there's a lot of chitter chatter in the world right now about the simulation theory. Tom, he uses the word simulation a lot, and he talks about this being a virtual reality. But what he means by that is not what other people mean when they say that this is a computer game and aliens created the game or somebody else created the computer and we're all just in a simulation. No, he's using it as a metaphor. So it's a free will situation here. Consciousness is the computer. Consciousness is what is fundamental, and physical matter reality is a subset of a larger reality, and there are rules within that reality that we are living. We feel pain, we have actual fear, we exist within time. There's things going on here that can be explained by Newtonian physics that are part of the subset of a larger reality. So what he's helping us to understand is that beyond that, there's more, and consciousness is limitless, and our consciousness can go outside of physical matter reality through these experiences. And he, like all these other people, does recommend that you just have an experience for yourself, because you're never going to understand it unless you do. So you can read all day, you can read all these books, but until you start having your own experiences, it probably isn't going to mean a whole lot to you. So that's another part of what I'm doing in season 2, is I'm helping to highlight these ways in which you can try to go about having your own experience. Meditation, Raja Yoga, out-of-body experience, binaural beats, Hemi-Sync, guided meditations. All these things are possible ways of getting your own experiential evidence. And remote viewing is another one of those ways. So after obtaining degrees in mathematics and physics, Tom specialized in nuclear physics during his PhD work at the University of Virginia. His 37-year professional career includes 12 years in technical intelligence, 15 years at Missile Defense Agency, and 10 years as a consultant in the general area of large systems risk and vulnerability analysis for various high-tech companies, including 2 years with NASA. So you can tell he's a smart man. Also, these Swamis I talked about were intelligent. Sivananda was a doctor, and Satchidananda was an engineer and a tinkerer in his own right. He flew planes, he fixed cars, he had all these old cars, he studied everything. He submitted himself to a lot of different tests over the years as well, so that people could also measure his abilities. So there's just a lot going on in these very rich lives, So let's see. We talked about the Monroe Institute and how Tom did his study there. And I'm going to skip through some of this. I have a lot of notes here, but I think we covered it for Tom. Okay, so one more yogic perspective, and then we're going to kind of move over into Catholicism. So this is another book that was interesting for me, Kundalini Tantra. This is by Swami Satchidananda Saraswati. I just wanted to share another book that is by a yogi and Swami, but from, he has a dedication to Sivananda in the front of his book. I didn't even remember that. So there's Sivananda again. Everybody's connected. But this is Kundalini yoga perspective, so it's a whole different kind of yoga. And the reason I brought this book up to talk about was because Kundalini, the kind of, I'll call it lore, I guess, because I'm going to use that word a lot in season 3, but I guess the story about Kundalini that a lot of people in the New Age and modern spiritual communities are familiar with is about the Kundalini awakening. So there's this idea or this metaphor of a serpent that lives at the base of your spine and raises up your spine, comes through all the chakras and kind of like blasts you awake and blasts you online and opens you up to this greater reality. And that energy is called Shakti, by the way. So this is about consciousness evolution. This is why, the reason this is important is because of how ancient these teachings are and how currently the Western mind is just starting to catch up to all of this, but this stuff has been taught and predicted and studied and practiced for a really long time. So let's just read a little bit from here. Everybody should know something about Kundalini, as it represents the coming consciousness of mankind. Kundalini is the name of a sleeping, dormant, potential force in the human organism, and it is situated at the root of the spinal column. In the masculine body, it is in the perineum, between the urinary and excretory organs. In the female body, it is located at the root of the uterus, in the cervix. This center is known as Muladhara. That's the chakra that it is. And it is actually a physical structure. It is a small gland which you can even take out and press. However, Kundalini is a dormant energy, and even if you press it, it will not explode like a bomb. To awaken Kundalini, you must prepare yourself through yogic techniques. You must practice asanas, pranayama, kriya yoga, and meditation. Then, when you are able to direct your prana, which is like your life force energy, into the seat of Kundalini, the energy wakes up and makes its way through Sushumna Nadi in the central nervous canal to the brain. As Kundalini ascends, it passes through each of the chakras, which are interconnected with the different silent areas of the brain. With the awakening of Kundalini, there is an explosion in the brain as the dormant or sleeping areas start blossoming like flowers. Therefore, Kundalini can be equated with the awakening of the silent areas of the brain. So this is so interesting and definitely important and relevant to this whole conversation around consciousness, because what this is pointing to is an ancient set of teachings and technologies. Yoga is considered a science, and these things they predict a future possibility that more and more people are beginning to believe in when it comes to human consciousness and what we're really able to do with our lives. And Kundalini awakening is often summarized as an awakening experience. So if you study anomalous phenomena at all, you will hear people talking about, oh, my awakening, or this happened or that happened. So anyway, we'll probably dig more into that as time goes on. But the reason I was thinking about it today is because in my studies, I've been noticing how certain technologies, like let's just say night vision goggles, for example, can often gather more data than the human eye when it comes to anomalous phenomena. Radars and other highly sensitive equipment can sometimes pick up on things that we are not picking up on. And it's a good reminder that our physical senses are somewhat limited and to varying degrees in different people. But what's exciting about Tom Campbell's work, Bob Monroe's work, the yogic teachings, and what we learn through remote viewers is that they're all helping us to understand that consciousness is not limited by the physical. And so these practices that allow us to activate dormant parts of our brain, or maybe not even our physical brain, but our consciousness coming online and coming awake, this could be a step towards this new paradigm where humankind becomes aware of a greater society of beings that includes potentially the non-physical beings and other entities. Or it could help us to develop the capacity to even sense and perceive within physical matter reality things that we are not currently able to perceive. That's exciting to me to imagine, at the very least. So that's it for the yoga books today, and we're going to move over into Catholicism. So when it comes to anomalous phenomena, we did talk about like UFO of God. There's different Christian sects that have different kinds of anomalous types of things going on that are very similar to Kundalini, very similar to sightings of aliens or UAP or UFO. And when it comes to the Catholic tradition, we've talked a little bit about Diana Walsh Pasulka on this channel. So the book that came out most recently by her is this book, Encounters, Experiences with Non-Human Intelligences, Explorations with UFOs, Dreams, Angels, AI, and Other Dimensions. Now, let's read about her. So I read one of her other books. It's called American Cosmic, and I believe she has one other book beyond that. Where's her little bio? Okay. Diana is a professor of religious studies at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. She has written several books, including American Cosmic, Heaven Can Wait, I've not read that one, and the book I'm holding here, Encounters, Experiences with Non-Human Intelligences. So basically this work is very interesting because it's part of the long history, actually, that started with Jacques Vallée, where these researchers are looking at anomalous phenomena and comparing it to religion and folklore. I need a sip. Strawberry lemonade. Yummy. So Diana's work has been gaining a lot of attention recently. There's a ton of really good interviews with her. And yeah, I recommend reading it. There's some interesting stuff in here. We've talked about it on other episodes, so you can look back into past episodes and see where I talk about Dr. Diana Walsh Pasulka. But we're going to kind of jump around again and talk about OBEs again. So, okay. All of this today is leading up to the big questions regarding the relationship between consciousness and anomalous phenomena of all kinds. And then we're going to frame where we're headed next in Shock's Talks, which is the side of this that no one wants to look at because it's dark, it's muddy, it's hard to understand, it's not really fun to think about sometimes, and at the same time it's very important to try to understand, and that is who is behind the UFO or UAP, who is operating the craft, what is non-human intelligence, what dimension of reality does it exist in, this NHI, non-human intelligence. Are we alone in our universe? Are we alone in physical matter reality, or are we being visited? Are we being visited by physical or non-physical or interdimensional or all of the above types of beings? And so in season 3, we're going to get into contact and abduction and experiencers of anomalous phenomena. In this season, we've talked about energy work, telepathy, OBEs, NDEs, healing, meditation, other psychic phenomena, and one more perspective on out-of-body experience that I want to just touch on is one that comes from a lineage of teachers starting with Brazil and then coming to the United States. So we talked about, how these lineages just sort of happen, and this is another one. It's just people passing down knowledge is a really ancient tradition, and it's important. It's really important. So this is the book I'm going to talk about next, Demystifying the Out-of-Body Experience by Luis Minero. And the teachers that came before were Wagner, or I don't know if that's how you say his name, Wagner Allegretti, and Dr. Waldo Vieira. This is from the foreword, a multidimensional world. Even just that name gives us a clue as to what we're talking about here. Whether you browse this book by jumping pages to follow a particular sequence of ideas or read it from cover to cover, you will find enough material to get an introduction to the consciential paradigm. That's what they call their studies. The study of consciousness as a principle independent from the physical body, the multidimensional nature of consciousness, the techniques and practical applications of OBEs, as well as the ethical consequences of this knowledge. By the way, those ethical consequences really do come up in all of this different work. So that's a really interesting, God, I could do like a whole season just on that. I've spent a lot of time thinking about that, but we'll talk about that later. Anyway, so Luis Minero, who is the author of this book, was born in 1972, graduated with honors in chemistry from Florida International University. You can tell all these people are very intelligent in their own rights. And he has been studying and developing paranormal phenomena since his adolescence. He began giving classes on this stuff in 1996, and he speaks English, Spanish, Portuguese, and German. He's lectured around the world. So, this book kind of breaks down a lot of information that sort of helps to build out a bigger picture understanding of what energy work might be, which Tom's theory does this as well, and so do all of the yogic teachings. But we're talking about intent, we're talking about willpower, we're talking about free will, we're talking about consciousness and connecting to realms that are non-physical, and using certain techniques to send energy, receive energy, work with your thoughts, work with telepathic communication, dreams, and much more. So I really loved that book, Demystifying the Out-of-Body Experience. Highly recommend. Again, this is a whole different set of terminology to describe concepts that we're seeing in all these different things. And it's really refreshing to hear different people describe it in different ways using their own language and just different breakdowns of these functions of consciousness. It's fascinating. So now we're going to get into the army side of it all. The old army guys. And this is going to start with remote viewer 001, as they call him, Joseph McMoneagle. So, just recently on Saturday, August 24th, 2024, I took a small workshop online through the Monroe Institute with Joe McMoneagle. It was titled Remote Viewing Pro Tips. And I talked about this in episode 36 of Shock's Talks if you want to hear more about it. So Joseph McMoneagle, born on January 11th, 1946, he's 78 now, is a retired U.S. Army Chief Warrant Officer. He was involved in remote viewing operations and experiments conducted by U.S. Army Intelligence and the Stanford Research Institute. He was among the first personnel recruited for the classified program known as the Stargate Project. That was 1978 to 95. Along with colleague Ingo Swann, McMoneagle is best known for claims surrounding the investigation of remote viewing and the use of paranormal abilities for military intelligence gathering. His interests also include near-death experiences, out-of-body travel, and unidentified flying objects. Surprise, surprise, it's all connected. So here are two of his books that I've read. This is Memoirs of a Psychic Spy, and this is Remote Viewing Secrets, a handbook. And he has 8 other books that I haven't read. And he mentioned Ingo Swann. This is one of the Ingo Swann books that I have. I've already also read Penetration, but I don't know where it is. Ingo Swann September 14th, 1933 to January 31st, 2013, was an American psychic, artist, writer, and former Scientologist, known for being the co-creator, along with Russell Targ and Harold E. Puthoff, or Hal Puthoff, of remote viewing, and specifically the Stargate Project. Swann has published 6 books, and he comes up all the time. He's a famous remote viewer. You're going to hear his name. People are talking about him. Did a bunch of different crazy things, ran in a bunch of different circles. I've got stories about him on different episodes of Shock's Talks. I'm going to kind of try to breeze through the last couple minutes of this so that we can wrap this up here. But there is a great new interview on American Alchemy with Jesse Michaels, where he interviews Daniel Sheehan, the lawyer who's currently representing Luis Elizondo. And he has a story of Ingo Swann that you can hear in that episode. Richard Dolan has stories from him, and he's just a really wild and interesting character. He was what they call a natural psychic. So he was one of those people who had really powerful abilities when it came to this stuff. And connecting all these people and connecting all these dots, we're going to talk about SRI. So SRI International is a United States-based nonprofit scientific research institute and organization headquartered in Menlo Park, California. It was established in 1946 by trustees of Stanford University to serve as a center of innovation to support economic development in the region. So the reason is because whenever you hear about these remote viewers or psychic studies, you're going to hear a lot of connections to SRI. So in 1972, again, a lot of this stuff going on in that 60s and 70s time range, physicists Harold E. Puthoff and Russell Targ undertook a series of investigations of psychic phenomena sponsored by the CIA, for which they coined the term remote viewing. Among other activities, the project encompassed the work of consulting consciousness researchers, including artist-writer Ingo Swann, military intelligence officer Joseph McMoneagle, and psychic illusionist Uri Geller. This ESP work continued with funding from the U.S. intelligence community until Puthoff and Targ left SRI in the mid-1980s. And this is the time when some people think the programs died or dropped off, and everyone on the inside and everyone who's a part of this study is all like, no, it just went underground. It just went more black program. It went more hidden, so we all know they never stopped studying these things, and there's got to be all kinds of crazy stuff going on with it now. So Hal Puthoff is now 88. And he's another name that you'll hear again and again. He's all over this anomalous world. And he's written a couple of books with Russell Targ. Russell Targ is 90 now. I saw him at Contact in the Desert 2024, which was really cool just to see him in person after hearing about him for so many years. He is a physicist and author. This is his book, Limitless Mind. A physicist and author who was a pioneer in the development of laser and laser applications, and was a co-founder of the Stanford Research Institute's investigation into psychic abilities in the 70s and 80s for the CIA. This previously classified work in what is now widely known as remote viewing. So I counted 36 books by him. I'm not sure if that was exactly correct. That's what I saw on his website, that he either authored or co-authored. So he has got a lot of work out there for us to dig into. And I'm going to read you something from his book. What page? Final paragraph, preface. Okay. Oh, of the preface. Yes, here we go. Okay. This is from Limitless Mind by Russell Targ. He's 90 now. The data from remote viewing research show, without a doubt, that our mind is limitless and that our awareness both fills and transcends our ordinary understanding of space and time. Psychic abilities, and remote viewing in particular, point to the possibility of our residing in and as this state of expanded, timeless, fearless, spacious awareness. Isn't that beautiful? It's exactly what the yogis said. It's exactly what Tom Campbell said. It's exactly what Luis Elizondo is starting to say now. It's pretty close to stuff that Diana Walsh Pasulka has come across. It's definitely the kind of stuff Luis Minero is talking about. And now these remote viewing people too. So psychic abilities are neither sacred nor secular. They are just natural human abilities. We can use them to find lost car keys or elusive parking spaces, to forecast changes in the stock market, or to discover who we really are. I believe that 99% of the value of psychic abilities resides in the opportunity they offer for self-inquiry and self-realization. Let's see if we can accomplish this together. That was written in 2002 on Targ's 41st birthday. So this is a really cool book, and I love hearing all these different takes on the same thing. We are more than just these physical bodies. We are limitless. Our consciousness is limitless. And this isn't just some woo-woo new age bullshit. This is some serious shit backed by years of science and so many different perspectives from different people around the world, and different traditions have come to this conclusion. So it's undeniable. So that's Russell Targ, and there's a documentary called Third Eye Spies. I think you can rent it on the Amazon Prime Video thing. And I know I've seen it. I think I've seen it. I think I'm going to rewatch it because it's been a long time, and I revisit these things from time to time. But yeah, that's something that somebody reminded me of recently, and I was like, oh yeah, I got to watch that again. Or maybe I haven't seen it and I've just seen parts of it. So Third Eye Spies, that's going to be cool. And we talked about the lawyer Daniel Sheehan because he was on that Jesse Michaels interview recently. Here's just some things he said that relate to this whole season and this whole topic. One of the most important issues that the human family deals with is the UFO issue, and it mixes in with the psychic faculties. So we're bringing it together here. There are all kinds of other strange phenomena on our planet among our own human family: telepathy, teleportation, astral travel, remote viewing, and transmutation of matter. We've culturally made individuals who have done these things so special that we build up a whole religion around the individuals who do these things. And then we say they are different and no one else can do these things. But those individuals are us. They just happen to have those faculties more evolved than us. It's like a mutation. We are all the same. So he calls it a mutation. This whole yogic tradition thinks of it more like something that you can activate within yourself by asserting your own free will over yourself and creating discipline and doing these practices. You know, the guru that I grew up with always said, I'm not special. This is in you. You are all this thing. I got that as a kid. That made total sense to me. A lot of the adults that came from other religious backgrounds and began following him, they didn't get it. They really didn't get it. They wanted to worship him, and they created this whole celebrity culture around him. And I think that was, you know, kind of a mistake, you know, maybe whatever, it is what it is, but it's kind of missing the mark. You know, this whole thing is about us, the limitless mind and natural ESP and out-of-body experiences and remote viewing. Like, these are all available to us, to all of us. And that's what Tom Campbell says in his book, and that's what all these different remote viewers have said over the years. So to access it, I think we do need to apply ourselves. We have to learn and practice. And when I went to that remote viewing workshop, that was the very first tip that Joe McMoneagle spoke. It was practice, practice, practice. That's what yoga's all about too, honestly. So big takeaways. Oh my gosh, we're wrapping it up. we're wrapping it up. Here we go. Okay. Big takeaways from season 1. UFOs are real, and there are many agencies with more knowledge than is available to the public when it comes to this topic. The US government has been involved in a cover-up for the last 80 years and a disinformation act. You'll learn all about that if you go back to season 1. Currently, there are many people working to bring light to this by way of policy, conferences, books, and more. You know, we had that congressional hearing last summer. There's just a ton going on. So go back to season 1 for UFO history and current UAP events. And I'm not talking about every video that ever gets posted online with like a sighting. I'm talking about big headline stuff. Then season 2, these are my sort of big bullet points, takeaways, whatever, conclusions. Humans are more than just our physical bodies. We have capabilities that go far beyond our basic 5 senses. There is a lot of science to back this. There are numerous techniques for gaining your own experiential evidence of the nature of reality. All of this is of great importance when it comes to understanding UFOs, UAP, and NHI, non-human intelligence. Season 3, where we're headed next. Along with reports of craft, we can no longer deny the biologics that have been brought into the public awareness during the July 26, 2023 U.S. congressional hearings. That's alien bodies or biological evidence of aliens. That means they're in physical matter reality. So at the very least, I think we're at a point now in this Shocks Talks journey where we can pretty safely say, I hesitate to say this is all like, this is real, this, you know, because I know it's always going to ruffle feathers and people are, but there's an overwhelming amount of evidence to suggest that physical craft have been visiting the earth for a long time. Some might be under the oceans, some might be in underground bases, some might be in the space around the earth, and some might be interdimensional, but there's definitely something physical going on in this physical matter reality. And now we're going to hear more about like the actual alien bodies that have been reported over the years and the experiences that people have had on these craft. So more confirmation of the alien presence just got laid on us, brought into the public eye by Luis Elizondo. I was going to say the other Luis again. This is Imminent by Luis Elizondo. Great book. Read it. Check it out. And even before this, even before the hearing and this book and the little talk that's going on right now online about biologics and alien bodies and what's happening, guess what? There's tons of research out there and tons of books written by people who worked with abductees, worked with contactees, had their own experiences. And that's what we're digging into next. So we're going to be looking at experiencer accounts, contactee or abductee anecdotal evidence, physical implants, markings, the books written by researchers who use hypnotic regression to retrieve buried memories of experiences with aliens, and also the ancient religious accounts and folklore that point to the phenomena. So that's it. That's where we've been and where we're going, and I'm really excited. Again, if you're new to the channel, go back to the beginning. If you've been here all along, you deserve like a degree now, like a Shocks Talks, I don't know, some award or something, because this is a lot of learning. Like, we've been on a learning journey here, and it's really exciting. And I'm going to continue practicing my meditation, my out-of-body, trial and error practice that I have going on right now. I'm doing all kinds of fun stuff in the realm of consciousness and energy. I'm taking an unblocking your home energy clearing workshop for the physical space that you live in that's supposed to help unblock energies in your life. I'm getting an Akashic Records reading tomorrow. And I'm just continuing to work with my own energy and my own mind, my own thoughts, using the things that I learned growing up, new things, trying things out, throwing things out. It's all experimental, it's all trial and error, but once you start having your own experiences, you're not really hunting for anything amazing because you already kind of know. You just know that now it's all about refinement. Now it's all about just taking it to the next level. And we're going to learn about how this might be really important stuff if we do find ourselves entering into a new paradigm where the human community is surrounded by a greater community of advanced and maybe just other beings. So stay tuned. Check out season 3. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time on Shocks Talks.